Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Crystal Conversations podcast. It is my honor and privilege to introduce you to our guest today. And I know that you will be blessed simply because there are those that go before us that walk the walk, that they go through the grind, that they have their learning lessons, and then they choose to pour back into those who follow in order to allow us to learn and us to grow. And so I'm so grateful because this person was introduced to me through a friend who is a networker extraordinaire. I mean, this guy consistently puts people together who can learn from one another, who can grow with one another, who can simply encourage and inspire one another. So I am grateful for our mutual contact, but I am so thankful to be able to introduce Dave Hartman. He is with an organization called Truth at Work, which we will talk about in a little bit. But first and foremost, Dave, welcome. Please.
Well, Crystal, I'm so excited to be here, and it was so great to meet you a few months back and have a new friend. So I'm honored to be a part of this today.
It is amazing how seemingly we would never run into another person that we meet along the way. But when one person chooses to step out of their comfort zone and say, you and you go meet, it works out well.
It has, and it's so cool. I mean, I see that happen all the time, and both my wife and I, we are connectors, and we love connecting people. It's just it's fun. I mean, but God's placed those two people, and He expects us to do something with it. So get them together and let the Lord work.
I didn't realize the value of being a connector. Like, no one ever stopped and said, "Hey, Crystal, you go out and meet a lot of different people, and there's no fear. You just sort of boldly walk into someone's life and say, here you are." But what I realized was it wasn't about me meeting that person. It was about bringing the value that God has placed in two different lives, two different spheres, and pulling them together for what could be even a larger impact or a larger blessing.
No question. That's absolutely true.
It was so being brought together by a fellow connector. I love that commonality in our walk, but there's so much more to the walk that you've walked and the lessons that you've learned. Please share with our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, so I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, both my wife and and I left Pittsburgh, graduated from Grove City in '80. And God sent me on a long journey for 34 years to be exact. And I needed to mature spiritually, personally, and then ultimately organizationally. So He sent me on that journey and taught me a lot during that time. And then ultimately to prepare me to come back here for what I was doing when I got back here and what I'm doing now. So I grew up here, just really excited to be back. But that journey, started. My wife and I got married in 1982, and I was one of those Western Pennsylvania guys that probably would have never left had if it wasn't for her. And so that's how we ended up leaving. Her dad took a job. We graduated, and they asked me to come and live with them for a little bit. So I did that, and then ultimately went to Texas because that was the land of opportunity at the time in the 80s. And so we met, and then along the way had some major career changes, but they've all, one has built upon the other. And I spent the majority of my career in sales leadership positions, and just leading people, leading sales organizations. And it's been a real blessing to me. And now I'm still able to even use what I learned and the skills that I acquired throughout the journey today. And that's really exciting. So my wife, Laurie, and I have two kids. David is 37, lives in Houston, is married with 3 kids. And Susan is married. She's 33 and has 4 kids, and they live in Akron, Ohio. So we have 7 grandchildren. We're blessed by that. Yay. And that's a lot of fun. And we do get to spend time. We even go to Houston once a quarter, but we get to see the ones in Akron a little bit more often. And so, so I retired from a full-time career in 2019, but what got me back to Western Pennsylvania, a lot of people move for career-related reasons, but started in 2013 and maybe even a little bit earlier, but 2013 before I made the decision to move back. But I've been around the game of baseball all my life. I played in college. My son played in college, and it's just always been a real passion of mine. And when he was done playing in college in 2008, I had an opportunity. The missions director at our church connected me with a young pastor who loved baseball, loved kids in the inner city of Cincinnati, where we were at the time. And so I took that opportunity and went down there and served and coached with him, and just fell in love with the kids. Already loved the game, loved the Lord, but these kids that had so much need that, most of them were fatherless, and they needed some type of male role model in their life. And so I got in that situation and just absolutely loved it. Well, so I did that for a few years, and then had the opportunity to come back here and coach at Urban Impact in the city, and here in the city of Pittsburgh. They were trying to do some things to enhance their baseball program. Wonderful ministry. And so that, and then there's a camp for inner city kids up in Elwood City called Pine Valley Camp. Those were the two things that got my wife and I back here. It was saying yes to those things over even where I was in my career. And I have worked for some great people, great jobs, but God was putting this in front of me, and is, are you going to make the decision for me? And I will take care of you. So I ultimately said yes. And if I would have had to have looked for another position when I moved back to Pittsburgh, I would have done that. But it was a real blessing. I got to spend another 5 years, though the travel was hard, spent another 5 years working for these wonderful people, and retired from there at the end of 2019. So I've been retired from full time for about almost 2 years now.
And what a great 2 years to be retired, when you can just step back from the world and say, Lord, what do you have?
Yeah. And it's, it's interesting. People say, boy, you were really smart. You retired right before COVID. I'm like, I'm not that smart. That was, it was just, I'm really fortunate, and I'm glad not to be doing all the traveling and stuff like that, because I think that's more difficult on people these days. But it's been the last couple of years. It's been, with all the changes that are going on in this world. Okay, God, what is it that you have? What do I need to be doing now?
It's interesting how when he calls us to step into a role, it's not necessarily how we would unfold the plan in a very logical, comfortable, all the ducks are in a row type of way. He says, here's what I have for you.
Right. And he did that through these ministry opportunities. And then I know we're going to talk about Truth at Work here in a little bit. He actually did that not till probably about 2.5 years ago, when I was already back here. Had no idea that I was ultimately going to be doing this when I moved back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it wasn't part of the game plan. It was just one of those details. He had steps down the line. He's like, I'll let you know when you need to.
That's right. Exactly.
I feel like I say that a lot to my 5-year-old is, we will let you know when it's important for you to know this. And he does that. God does the same with us. He's like, I will give you what it is I need you to focus on right now.
Yeah.
Be diligent, be obedient, be faithful with what I've given you. But this is where you need to be right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, with these shifts, building a career, being someone who is in a leadership role, and even traveling, you have to have a level of autonomy and ability to adapt in different scenarios. How has that been? I mean, married nearly 40 years. That's pretty awesome. That's something to celebrate.
Yes, it is.
Begin with. How have you learned to balance being a leader while also being a partner?
You say a key word there, in balance, because that's one of my 5 core values, and been through the John Maxwell leadership stuff. And in his core values, that balance is one of my 5. And I had and what really uh, what really helped me change and have a more balanced life. This was back when I was in my late 30s, but I was in a position where I had just been promoted and was going to move. And we had new competitors in our business. There was a lot of things going on. Well, then I was getting ready to buy a house in the southeast part of the country. And I got a call from my boss saying, "Have you moved yet?" And I said, "Why do you ask?" And ultimately, I got to stay living in Cincinnati at the time, kept the position I was promoted to, but I kept changing. There were new customers I was meeting, new
Mm.
people on my team that I was meeting. Then I got changed, and all this happened again. Competitors coming in, and then I had probably about 6 months later, I was in a in our boardroom out in our headquarters, and I had some serious health issues. I had a situation that probably it was more anxiety, panic attack related, and I felt like I was going to die at the situation because I was always athletic, was in good shape, heart rate, blood pressure, all that stuff was really good, and they just both soared. And when I finally came out of that, it was like, I need to get some things in balance. And so
Mm.
that's really when the balance part of my life, okay, my personal life, which includes my family and my health, obviously, and then my spiritual life, my work life, because it wasn't, we tend to, as people, especially young people, we're out there and think that we can conquer the world and we're hard charging, and that was God's way of correcting me, and I needed that.
Oh,
I
don't I
needed
know
that.
it? I
Yeah,
can relate thoroughly. And he's like, before I even knew him, he was like,
yeah,
"Hold on, child. I've got
yeah.
some things for you, but you need to
And,
slow down."
and sometimes we need to get, I think sometimes the messages are a little softer, but then I was not hearing them, and ultimately the message had to get a little bit stronger, and ultimately this situation happened. So after that, my balance, I mean, and hey, the balance is something that we still work on every day of our life, because things continually change, but that balance piece is really, really huge. So having to balance the travel, when you go back to your question on work, because that's where I would work out even if I was on the road, get up early in the morning, do my devotional stuff, and then I would work out before I did anything else, because the physical part really plays into the mental part of traveling and your performance at work, and and then being a husband and a father. So I really got to that at that point. Shortly after that, I had a opportunity to move to our headquarters, and my kids were at 6th and 9th grade at the time, and it just wasn't a good time. And ultimately made a change to go to another company. They wanted me to move. I did not want to move, and it was like, I'm going to still travel, but travel in a situation where I have a little more control over it, and then I can be here for the stuff that's really important for my kids and for my wife.
What did that do for your family when they saw you? And maybe they've never really articulated it, but was there a shift when they experienced you saying, "I'm going to choose the family. I'm going to choose the control that I have, even though it's not ideal or perfect. It is what I can do right now for this unit."
I'm not sure at the time. They, when they were younger, they saw it, but they may not have necessarily said anything. But as they're in their 30s now, they said, "Dad, I know you were there." And
Mm.
and sometimes it would take some sacrifice. I remember times being out of town early in the week, and there might be an event or an activity one of them had on a Wednesday or something, and I would be there. And sometimes then Thursday morning, I'm back heading out of town. Those types of things. So you only get one shot at this, and you got to make it count. And I just wanted to make sure that that I had no regrets.
I was going to say,
With
that's not something you regret, is making it happen to be there.
No, I would never regret that. And then I hope to be can't be there as much because I don't live in the same town, but we hope to be like that for our grandkids as well.
I think that's so important, is it's not about perfection. It's not about the ideal. It's about being strategic in what is the highest priority? What is one of those core values that we're making our decisions upon?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I creatively problem solve to get as close to that ideal or adhere to those core values as possible?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's not going to be perfect. And again, it's a constant work in progress, and you're continuing to work toward that. There's a chance that your core values could even change a little bit. They're not going to change much. You may have something that pops into that top 5, but balance is one of those ones that is just, I don't think it's chosen a lot by people as one, but it's so important. It's so important.
How was that process for you? I remember being introduced, it was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People when I was in
Mm-hmm.
my young 20s. And up until that point, I still have it on my bookshelf. It still has the base name that it belongs to, that it was given to me. It came out of the library of the naval base that I was on. And they said, no, like, you need this.
Yep.
And when I started to read those pages by some of these leadership influencers from that have left legacies on
Mm-hmm.
generations to come, it was like my brain just popped open. It wasn't shared to me as a child or as a young adult. But when this book started opening my eyes to the John Maxwell's, to the Stephen Coveys, and now we
Mm-hmm.
have so many more, what was that like for you working through these core values?
Well, it's interesting. So as you said that, I'm looking in my bookshelf, and the 7 Habits is up there. And then you brought up about legacy. That's another one of my core values. I mean, the point, I want to leave. I want to leave this place better as a result of being here and utilizing the gifts that God's given me. So, but working through that process is really, really helpful. I think that we all, we have an idea of, what's important to us, what's the priorities, but until you really work through a process you spend the time, and you have to spend considerable time to really drill it down to what those are. So I'm not coming from sales leadership type background. That's not me. I'm not a process oriented guy, though I've come to really appreciate processes in the more recent years. That's normally not me. So, but to take the time and do it. And I just really have been exposed. I've been very fortunate throughout my work career, especially to be exposed to different people, different situations to help me work through that. Like Maxwell, the stuff we did, it was in my prior role before I retired, we went through his training stuff. And, I've been really blessed to have the opportunity to get involved in situations like that throughout my life.
I would agree. It's listeners, if you're hearing some of these terms or these authors and not really sure where it's coming from, you're going to notice that in previous episodes, we highlighted the importance of being self-aware, knowing where your starting point is, what that looks like. And then also, previous episodes have highlighted the thought of inner work. Dave is hitting on both of these by saying it does take time. This is an intentional digging in of who we are, what our days stand for, and what that means once we're gone. And he's sort of walked this walk in, and there's different people who do this. And like you said, there's different processes to walk through, there's different programs. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't stop, pause, reflect, and take action according to that new knowledge, we're not being intentional about moving forward.
Right. And that intentionality is important. You use that word. That's certainly you have to be intentional about it.
Now, have there been different leadership styles that have impacted you over the years, either made you grow a little bit or grown a little bit for that matter?
Yeah, I think that, having leaders throughout my life, people that, especially from a work career, I've seen it. I've had very, very positive examples, and I've had very negative examples. However, they both have helped me in my own leadership journey. And so things that, I mean, I wasn't necessarily taught any of that in school or stuff. This was stuff that was emulated for you. And it really comes it comes back to how you treat people. It comes back to relationships and how you treat people. And so I've had both, and I've learned from both, and I'm thankful for both at this point. I might not have been so thankful for the negative examples at the time, but looking back on it, I am very thankful. I've learned from each and every leader that I've been involved with, whether I reported to them directly or people that I just work with, or people even in today, especially where I am today. I've been so fortunate to be around leaders in all different areas and continue to learn from them every day. I mean, when we leaders need to be readers, we need to learn, and it's a constant. We need to be learning every day of our life, because you're not staying the same. You're either moving forward or you're going back.
Yeah, there's not really a neutral zone of
There
we're
isn't.
just going to hang out right here.
No, you don't, because things are going to change, and no, there is no neutral zone.
I love that perspective, because so often we get almost trapped by the illusion that says, pause, I'm fine right where I'm at. You know what? I'll be okay. Or I'll get to this tomorrow, or I'll take this on when it's comfortable, when it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But as you mentioned, the reality is there's not one thing around us, no matter where we find ourselves, like you and I sitting and recording this, someone listening in their car. There's so much movement and energy and change occurring internally, biologically, and
Mm-hmm.
also environmentally, that when that change is occurring, if we're sort of hunkering down, holding on to what is, we've already fallen behind.
Right.
That process of seeking knowledge and learning or becoming aware is what allows us to grow.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Have you had mentors that impacted you in such a way that you've sort of begun to emulate their mentorship?
Yeah, I think that we all do. You want to try to emulate the positive. In fact, I still have I recently, when I retired, moved back to Pittsburgh, still traveling. One of the things I was looking for when I moved back here was to have a mentor in my life. And yeah, I'm excited to say here in the last 3 or 4 months, I do have one here locally now, which I'm really excited about. And, but I've had people that have, that have mentored me, maybe even not in an official way, but just people that I've really respected, their leadership and who they are. And I try to do that today. I love being around younger leaders, younger people, and try to impact their lives with the things that I've learned, the things that I've made mistakes along the way, to try to help them, prevent them from making similar mistakes, but helping them grow. There's nothing more. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot that's more gratifying than pouring into people and pouring into other people and sharing with them stuff that has worked and not worked in your own life.
When you were saying the words pour into people, I saw this picture of this glass water pitcher going into this clear glass. And even as you pour out, the pressure or the depth of that water is growing deeper. And so there's two forces coming towards one another. And so when you pour out into someone, you are inevitably impacted by what's coming back towards you, even if that wasn't the original intention.
Mm-hmm. It's that intentionality with people. Yeah, sometimes you go in with certain intentions on, hey, this conversation, this time is going to be this. But there are, most of the time, I will come out with more than I ever thought I was going to come out with, or more than I intended, and usually go into situations like I'm not necessarily looking for anything, but I've benefited greatly. When you have relationships and intentionality with people, it's everybody grows from the experience. Even if it's difficult, even if it's a difficult one where you're going through some conflict, you do grow as a result of it.
I agree. I think about at this point, I almost think it's kind of a cliche term, but it is valuable to this conversation, where it's the giver's gain.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's conflict, whether it's service, if you are giving, there's that pressure of something coming back towards you. You're filling something up and it's coming back towards you. But when we approach things with a takers or a receivers or an entitled mentality, we become this like empty void of someone else passing things along to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it stops. Like it just continues to take, and you miss the beauty of that reciprocal relationship between humans, the environment, the situation, where it could be an exponential benefit more than we ever imagined, versus this void of give.
Yeah, I think it goes to the term servant leadership. And when we're serving others, we end up coming out better all the time. And I think as leaders, I mean, the people that truly I've been around that have had the biggest impact are people that were there to serve. And they were in positions wherever they were, where they could have demanded you to do something. They could have said, hey, because of my position, you need to do this. But these are people that were out there to serve you, to help you. And servant leadership is, I mean, it's probably today it's used. I mean, it's used a lot more, but it's still, there's nothing like that. We're here to serve other people. And we do, even hopefully not selfishly, but we do come out better if we are there to serve others, and we do it with intentionality.
Oh, absolutely. The motives definitely produce the reward.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of servant leadership and giving, when I see you, like from the first time I got to meet you in person, you carried yourself with that relational servant-minded quality. Like for your body language, your posture was confident. You had the eye contact, extended a hand to shake it. Even when we were discussing sitting at this table, there was the leaning in, there was the engagement. Those are things that are qualities we learn along the way. Mm-hmm. That may not be, oh, here, let me get this for you. Let me give you something. Let me be there for you. But it's the way that you serve someone with your ministry of presence. Mm-hmm. That it can be intentional and it can be manipulative, but it's purely there to connect. Are there other skills that you choose as a leader, as a mentor, as someone who serves others? Are there other skills that you think you've picked up along the way that are advantageous to someone who wants to implement it in their way of being present and serving others?
Yeah, sure. One of the first thing that came to mind is, listening. I've become a better listener. And I think the better listener you are, it shows that you care more, that you listen, you hear the people, you talk about eye contact, you talk about shaking hands, you look at people, because when you're looking at that person, smile on your face, and you're hearing them out, giving, it might be a nod, it might be, little things to show along the way that you care, responding, sometimes paraphrasing, coming back. So these are all personal skills that you're not going to learn, just in school or anything else, but these are things that you pick up along the way to show the people that you really care. Because at the end of the day, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you have to care about people in a way. So that listening is something that's really important. Doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. I tell people I'm not that smart. These are just basic skills that you have, that you pick up in your life. Doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And then operating with, people need to be able to count on you. I mean, commitment is not commitment so often. I mean, it is not, doesn't exist as much today as we'd like to see it. People have excuses for not doing things or getting out of things. We have every communication tool known to man to communicate with people, and we still don't do it. And so, making that commitment and following up on your commitments, operating with honesty and integrity. These are all types of things that are so valuable in your life. Again, they don't necessarily show how much you know, but when you operate like this as a leader, people see how much you care, and guess what? They respond to you, and they respond. If you want your leadership team to go in a certain direction, you operate like that, chances are they're going to follow.
I appreciate that when you set the tone of how this exchange is going to be. I know I respond differently. I'm totally someone who will give grace to a change or a missed check mark in the process.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because of the things that have led up to that point in the relationship that let me know there was no malicious intent, that the goal is to connect. When we can practice that in a way where we're just getting better. We're not perfect. Like you said, I'm not that smart. And I'm surely not that detail oriented, but by God's grace, he gives me the desire to serve better than I did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can walk in that growth minded, learn from yesterday, strive for what we're learning today type of rhythm, it brings us closer together as humans and more impactful as organizations.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said that better myself. That was great.
Speaking of overlap between our person, organization, and then clearly God being the foundation for that, the unique value add to the organization that you are with, Truth at Work, brings together the spiritual, the personal, and the organizational life rhythms and choices and intentionality of decision makers.
It does.
And blends it all together, correct?
Correct.
Tell our listeners a little bit more about Truth at Work and why that's been so meaningful for you.
So Truth at Work is an organization that's been around since 1998. It's based in Indianapolis, and there was no presence here in Western Pennsylvania. And these are Christian, and I emphasize Christian because in this particular case, we have a statement of faith that people need to sign, and there are different leadership forums, roundtable type things out there. But this one, these are Christian leaders, business, nonprofit, could be a pastor, but these are leaders that are decision makers. And these are roundtables where we get together once a month in a safe, confidential environment where people can come in and share, pour into others and be poured into. People that come and, where do you get your best ideas from? You get them from people that usually come from other industries, not people that you're working with every day. Yes. You know how they think, you know what they say, but we learn from others. So we get together and we share real business, real life, and we talk about best practices. People bring roundtable issues that we get to during the course of the meeting. We spend a lot of time in prayer because God is at the center of this. If he's not, then we're wasting our time. So Truth at Work is it is the place where your personal life, your spiritual life, and your organizational life intersect. Most companies companies have boards of advisors. Companies may hire a consultant, and they can help you in a certain way and maybe in multiple ways, but not many situations where they're going to be able to help you in your personal life. Maybe you get a situation where that could happen, but for the most part, no, and almost never in somebody's spiritual life. And all three of these go together. You don't take, people say, well, yeah, I can leave my work. I can leave my work behind when I go home. No, you can't. You don't. You can't leave your spiritual life. You can't leave your work, spiritual, and personal life separate. It just doesn't happen. And so we deal with all three of these because they all three go together. And so yeah, that's a little bit about Truth at Work. And I've been on this journey now for about a year and a half, and it's really been exciting.
I think that's so important to recognize that these three do not segment throughout our days, our 168 hours a week, because one, our brain just doesn't operate that. Every piece of information, piece of data, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, it all comes in and it weaves, it integrates into other pieces of our life and knowledge. And so if we're taking in faith-based, if we're taking in work-based, if we're taking in personal-based information, it's entering our brain and it's weaving as it relates to other things accordingly. Like, that's the way we develop thoughts and ideas and belief systems. And so I sort of geek out about this because I like turning brain science-based things into common language. And you saying that they don't separate is such a true thing, but we fight so hard to keep it separated that most leaders can find themselves isolated if they stay within their industry at the top of their little mini pyramid that they see themselves. And they lack that connection piece that you're essentially saying, hold on, we know you feel isolated in this department, in this journey, in this company, even in this family, but you're bridging that connection between those decision makers.
Right.
And allowing them, as you said, to be poured into and also give back the value of their own journey in this space in a confidential way.
Right.
And that's so important because it's an investment to be there, but the cost of not being there can be detrimental, because when we're isolated, as every single human on earth now understands, there's been research for decades that isolation breeds increased trauma responses, increased anxiety symptoms, symptoms of depression. We lack clarity and sort of adherence to our normal belief system that we would function on if we were healthy and thriving. And so when we're isolated, we make poor decisions or insecure decisions. And by staying connected, which is God's original design with the Father, the Son, and the Spirit showing connection, developing man and woman, creating connection between humankind. Now, as humans living in a broken world, connection breeds a healthy establishment of what we were designed to do. Your strengths complement mine. Where I am weak, someone else is strong. And when we lock elbows, there's just so much cooler things that he can do in and through us as a body.
Oh yeah. And we do say this, and this is true. I mean, leaders, and even more so today. A couple of years ago, this statement would have been true, but it's even more true today, that leaders are lonely, isolated, and overwhelmed. So what do you do today when you are lonely, when you are isolated? You had said this, Crystal, just a little bit ago about poor decision making and doing things that making decisions that are going to impact not only your life, but other people's lives. And these are things that can be very, very costly. And so when things get tough, where do you go? And Truth at Work provides the environment for people that they can get together and share. And I can sit here, and I just came off of a Truth at Work roundtable on Thursday, and the value that's there, what these leaders gain. I can't even explain it in a conversation like this. It's something that people have to experience. It's just, and people will tell you it's life-saving for them.
I can only say all the amens. I oversee a group of writers and speakers who have biblical foundations, and we've come together over that common ground where sometimes we feel so lonely in our individual space that when we come together, the power of that group, the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of what comes out of that 1 hour a month for us is so impactful to our personal, our spiritual, our organizational rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
that we know those people are there, and you're creating that for these decision makers who are influencing teams of people, groups of people out there in the community who have a larger mission at hand,
Mm-hmm.
while still caring for their heart and their home in that same sort of triad of attention.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, we are Truth at Work roundtables meet for 4 hours a month, once a month. And it's an investment financially. It's an investment in time. It's an investment in other people that you have to be willing to share and be vulnerable with other people. So it is there. And, the commitment to it's great, but the return on it is just, it's on, I can't even explain it.
It's those immeasurable benefits that really speak to, you know what? I understand there's a cost that is tangible, but when the reward is intangible and immeasurable, whew, it's exciting.
Oh, it is. And, when you get involved in something like, hey, we're all pressed for time, we're all busy. So what, people, the normal things are, hey, I can't afford it, or I don't have the time. The time issue, I mean, financially, that's always a concern. Time wise, it's like, okay, so you're spending time doing what? I can make an argument that this 4 hours in a month is going to change everything else that you do throughout the rest of the month. And then from a financial perspective, it's like, okay, the value that you get, one good idea. If you get one good idea at one meeting, it's going to more than pay for the cost of this for a year or maybe even longer. So it's just about, okay, where am I going to spend my time and my money to not only better myself, but better my organization, better my walk with the Lord. And so it is. There's the value of it. It's the you can't put a price tag on it.
I agree. When I've begun this journey of really digging in, my husband calls it when Crystal's gaining her mental miles, which is how I came up with the Gain Mental Miles program. When I'm gaining these mental miles, when I'm figuring out like, how can I stretch? How can I change? What I've realized is things like time and money are stagnant measurements. Like, these are things that have objective values.
Mm-hmm.
Which is such a foreign concept in our society as a whole, to have these things that you can actually measure. You can move them around. And as I teach my 5-year-old math, being able to see, you know what, you can have 2 + 4 = 6, 2 + 2 + 2 = 6, 3
Mm-hmm.
plus, and you go through all these variations that equal the same results.
Mm-hmm.
So say we have $1,000 in our bank account that month. How many different ways can you use that $1,000 to allocate different results? And
Mm-hmm.
then you play with it. The same with our 168 hours a week. How many ways can you change up your 168 hours a week to get different outcomes, and see these are tangible things that we can actually shake up, essentially, as decision makers, as leaders, to impact our life and our legacy leaving actions differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to have an emotional attachment to it. It's simply, what did this equal? Can we shake it up a little bit? Can we mix up the equation
Mm-hmm.
between us and this measurable thing, and see what the outcome differs? And what you're
Right.
saying is, one idea through this investment could be decades worth of impact because of that moment.
It can. I mean, the impact it could have on your business, the impact it could have on your faith, the impact it could have on your marriage, your relationship with your kids. How do you put a dollar? I mean, you can put the dollar impact on somebody's business, but you can't put a dollar impact on these other things.
No.
And these are the types of things that we get into. These are, they are business meetings but all three of these, again, they work together. And you can't put a dollar value on it.
Agreed. So there are folks out there that this may be resonating. They are aching to connect and find other people who are putting a priority in these three areas, being melded together and functioning accordingly. How can they get a hold of you?
Well, so I'm in Western Pennsylvania, so I'm in the Pittsburgh area, and I'm the chapter president here in Pittsburgh. So they could contact me at my email address at DHARTMAN at truthatwork, TRUTHATWORK.org, or they could call me. Certainly call me. I have a 513 area code. I still have an old Cincinnati area code number, but 513-604-2409. Now, I know that you, Crystal, that you have people that are listening to your podcast that are in other cities. And certainly I could connect them with people with chapter. I mean, we're in over 30 states. We have close to 40 chapter presidents, of which I'm one. So we can connect. I can connect people, or they could get on the Truth at Work website, which is just truthatwork.org, and contact our folks in the headquarters, and they can direct them to a particular market.
Beautiful. So they have multiple ways to get in contact and find the chapter that's right for them, and even ask the questions that's relevant to where they're starting from.
Yeah, we get together, and part of what I do and what other people do is we get together for meetings over coffee, over lunch. And then we will have other things that will come up occasionally. We'll bring people in and have a presentation and talk more about it. So it's just how can we meet them? How can we serve them? And we will come to them, and we will try to if it's somebody that has an interest. I know that in fact through COVID there were even some roundtables that were Zoom roundtables that they would have people from different parts of the country that would be on a roundtable and do it through Zoom.
Which is really exciting. Adaptability in relationships seems to be the core of moving forward from here for those who are interested. Is be ready to connect, be ready to learn, be ready to give and serve wherever it is that you're called.
Oh, yes.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners who they want to make an impact? They have a heart to serve God with their strengths and their abilities, but they're just not. They need to know that it's okay to do so.
Yeah. Obviously people listening are in different parts of their life, different parts in their walk with the Lord, different parts in their career. But I would say this, when you do find a couple things, when you finally hit that sweet spot where the areas where God has gifted you match up with what you're doing, there's nothing like it. And I feel like I'm there now in this part of my life, and it's really exciting. And so you want to work towards that. Doesn't mean you have to quit your job tomorrow. It doesn't mean that you have to do certain things, but you start, there's plenty of assessments out there. You can take assessments on where your giftedness is, things that you're really passionate about, and start serving, start doing those things, whether it's through your church, through in the community, wherever it may be, but start doing those and working. And then God knows the timing, whether it's, some people he calls out like that, and you got to make that decision and go. Other times it's just a journey. And then ultimately when you get to the point where you're supposed to retire, though retirement's not in scripture, the last time I checked, when it all comes together, I can say there's nothing like it. I want to live out the rest of my life this way, just continue to charge ahead, try to be obedient to where God's called me, and to serve other people. And don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do something that God's put on your heart to do, because he's in control. He will take you on that journey. But I'd love to be, one of the things that God's gifted me is being an encourager of others. I want to encourage others, and there's plenty of negativity. There's plenty of people out there that will tell you what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, but you can. And this is not a self-help thing or anything, but I believe God's put in us certain gifts, talents, innate abilities to do what he wants us to do. And let's just follow him, and let's be in community and help one another. Because that's one of the things when I was younger, I thought I could, hey, I could do all this on my own. And I found out through my health issue and other reasons, no, that's not possible. You can't do that. That's a pride issue at that point. And so I would say that. And the other thing is that's really been important for me, and I try to do this every day. I try to pray for God's wisdom every day. God, what is it that you want? What is it that you have for me? Not what I want. And I just remember learning that a long time ago. Pray for his wisdom every day, and just, listen to him, and he'll direct you where he wants you to go.
Amen. 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 Listeners, I'm so thankful for your time. I am so thankful for Dave being here to pour into each of you. If you get nothing else from this podcast, hear me out. Find a way to connect with others and live on mission for the one who created every piece of you and loves you more than you could ever imagine. Take care, everyone.